countries in Latin America a national mission movement, something like AAM for German. We did that for every one of the 23 countries. And also to connect with the global mission as well. In the process, as I finished this, this role as the leader of a regional mission movement, the Lord opened for me the opportunity to connect and to understand more about the global mission. And for some time, I was the international leader for what we call Great Commission Roundtable. That was a mega structure of mission that was leading what the WA, the World Evangelical Alliance, and the Lausanne movement, and 82,000, and some of the regional and global movement to do in terms of cooperation, in terms of how to do mission together. So I had those, in my country we call the 15 minutes of fame. When you put in a position that no one will be in the future, because in some point when this Great Commission Roundtable end up the role, it disappeared, so there is no another mega structure like that. So I had that privilege to sit together and to try to think in terms of how to put together all the world in direction of the mission. After that, the Lord gave me the opportunity to lead a mission agency, the Evangelical Free Church of America. They have a mission agency called Reach Global, and I was appointed as international director for Europe. So I moved for a while in Hungary, in Budapest. I had my office there and traveled in different places. So after a while, I was invited to be executive director of the Mission Commission of the World Evangelical Alliance, and that was my role in last year. So how can I describe myself in this process? Well, I think it's I describe myself as a pilgrim pastor, a pastor that is following the pilgrimage of the church in different parts of the world. So when we talk about migration, it's something that really speaks very, very deep to my heart, because I am living that. In the moment that I start hearing about mission was means for us people from other parts coming to my place. But now we ourselves are missionaries that are moving from our place to another places. So migration is following the same path. So when we see that migration is in reality, it is not a problem. It's a human reality. Sometimes when we see mission, we hardly understand how it's. Oh, I don't know if we can clarify it a little more, but suppose we have in this place the map of United States and Europe and the rest of the time. But hopefully it works at least. Yeah. The dots that you are looking there and the names here is from 1830 and to 39, from blocks from 9 years, where the migration to United States start. So starting in 1830, the year 1830, you can see how the migration started illuminating the world. So if you can see in this part of the screen, you can see that the names of the countries are changing, but the reality continues the same. The countries, the places, and the people are changing, but the reality of migration is exactly the same, and it has been happening since the beginning of the story. So when we think that migration it's something new and it's affecting you, please forget about it. It's the story of the world everywhere. So you can see in beginning in the 60s, Latin America start going to North America, initially from Mexico, and then the rest of the countries of South America start moving there, but also Southeast Asia start adding to the process. So from the years 1970s, the global south start moving to the global north. And it start changing the reality of the world. Because in this moment, we could state that, that migration is really changing the shape of the world. When we see the reality of the Guatemalan, we are a migrant community as well. It is only the number of migrants from Guatemala to United States. And as you can see from the number of people living in the United States, 1/3 of them already born in the United States. And it is the reality of migration. Because the migrant came, and the migrant married and get children, and the children start the new generation that we call 1.5, and the 1.5 generation is that kind of generation that they know that their parents are from Guatemala, but they feel that North American. But the North American felt that they are Guatemala, but they act like a North American. So that confusion started with the 1.5 generation. In that moment, the generation start a clash, where they don't understand where they belong, and that is when the problem starts in migration. So in the case of Guatemala, we have almost the same amount of migrants from Guatemala in the whole Europe as well. So migrants from Guatemala are traveling everywhere. I have been working in the last time with a mission agency that called Camino Global, and our focus, our mission is to work alongside with the Spanish-speaking church everywhere. And we realize that the Spanish-speaking church is everywhere. We have a website where we are uploading all kind of resources for the church in order to be downloaded everywhere for those who need in order to lead the churches. I am amazed. We have more than 1.5 downloads every year. But most of those downloads, it's outside of Latin America. We have from Korea, from Jordan, from the Philippines, even from Australia. So everywhere, the Spanish-speaking church is spreading now. Paul Johnson wrote in his encyclopedia that from 1995, Spanish is the most spoken language in Christianity. So that is changing the shape. So transition and moving, and especially migration, is changing the shape of the world every day. But when we see that, if I can look for a map that really represents what migration is all about, this is my favorite map. Because this map, as you can see, is showing where the migration, in every one of the countries, the amount of migration out and the amount of migration in, and where those immigrants are going to, and where are they coming from. So let's see the examples of Latin America. If you see the huge number of people are moving out from Latin America, it's a huge number that is coming from Europe, but it's even bigger, the one that is going to North America. Let's see Europe. If you see Europe, you are moving from one country to another in Europe as well. So the major migration in Europe is it's internal migration from one country to another. But you can see that you have sources of migration very strong from Latin America, very strong from Southeast Asia, and it was finished in 2013. So probably is not recording the amount of migration from Northern Africa. It probably is bigger than what you say. So if you observe that map, we came to the realization that migration it's a reality. In some point of the time, if not it's happening right now, you will be engaging with the migration in some point. And we as church need to respond to those questions. Because sometimes we see the problem, we see the obstacle, we see the mess that migration is producing in the church, in the world, in the different countries. But we didn't realize what are the benefits of migration. You probably heard about what is happening in Latin America, especially with the huge migration that is moving from the south to the north. It's amazing. I cannot describe that. You probably saw the pictures of this parade that started in Honduras and end up in the United States. That is the smaller part of migration. During the time that all the news were following this parade from Honduras to United States, probably double or triple of the number of people were stand up in the front of the United States border. And we usually ask for that. And you know, you probably heard about President Trump is trying to build a wall. I remember that President Kennedy stand up in front of the wall in Berlin asking, please fall down that wall. And now we have a President Trump that, please build the wall. That's the story of the different nations. But the question is, it is possible for a wall to stop migration? What do you think about it? Yes or no? It's possible that the wall stop migration? Not at all. It's just an obstacle, but it doesn't. The only thing that is going to produce that is that migration will become harder, difficult, and more expensive. But migration will be continuing. In this moment, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking with a person, a North American, related in the government spheres about immigration. And I asked that question, is the wall stopping migration? And he looked at me and laughed. And he said, not at all. It makes it harder for us. And I said, what is happening? You know, when a family came to the border, the only thing that we can do that is keep the records of them and pass it on. So that's the reality. Because in the United States, they need the migrants. We are over-dimensioned the migration from Latin America. But the migration to the United States, as we saw in the map, is from different places. So I think in this moment, I can say that migration will continue and migration will be a situation in the United States. Probably the big question is not how to stop migration. The big question is how the church in the United States need to engage with migration. I remember a time when I was preaching in a church in a very white North American church, and when I was talking with them, they started raising some questions, and one of them raised the hand, and instead of a question, he made a statement, and he said, "I think that you have to go back to Latin America and say the Latin Americans that they stop coming here because we don't want them." And I said, okay, I can do that. But are you ready to go and work in your farms? Are you ready to go and clean the houses? Or to do babysitting when the people are doing? Are you ready to do that? And then I say, you know, sometimes we see the problems and the obstacles and the difficulties. But when we see that as church, and I say, for you as church, probably there is an alarm clock that is reminding you what it means, the Great Commission, and what it means, the Great Commandments. And it's giving the opportunity for the church to put the two elements together. So migration, it's a problem. It's a reality, I'm sorry, instead of a problem. But it's not new. Because when we came and see that, and this is your picture, is where are the sources of migration for Europe. And as you can see, the doors are open everywhere. If you try to close one door in Spain, The door in Italy or in Greece is open, and it continues open everywhere. So when we see that, how can we face that? In which way we can respond to the migration reality? Well, let's see what the experts say. And Andrew Wall say this that for me was really shocking. He said that migration become a more important element than reformation, because in some way it's changing the shape of the church. Why? Let's go and advance in this. But migration exists since the beginning of our story. If we came to the Old Testament, we realized that migration is coming since the beginning. As clear as this, it is the third sin after creation and sin. So the Bible starts with creation in the first chapter, with sin in chapter 3, and at the end of chapter 3, migration starts emerging in the story of the humanity. So people have been moving all the time. When we continue looking at that, as we point to the patriarch and matriarch, we can see that they have been traveling all the time. The history of the Israel starts in a move. As you remember, Abraham was called to move from his home place to another places and start wandering about the world because of migration. Because of that was what the Lord is asking him to do, but not to depend on the land, but to depend on the Lord. He's asking them that he is going to give him a land, a different land, but with a different mentality. And that explains the process to change from Abraham to Abraham. From a man with a wife with no children, with a man and a woman that have generation behind them. So that is the starting point of migration in the Old Testament. If we can see in chapter 26, we see the transition of Isaac, when Isaac is calling to go to Egypt. And in that migration, they open the opportunity for the people to start growing. And as you remember, the 70 of them migrate into Egypt, and more than 2 million going out of Egypt. So migration was used by the Lord to provide the opportunity to fulfill his promise for the people of Israel. When we continue and looking in chapter 28, we say Jacob is calling to start moving to the new places in order to get an identity isolated from his brother and separated of his father, but to stand in the point to give birth to the 12 tribes of Israel. So in the Old Testament is full of that. If we continue looking in the Old Testament, we see that in the text of that, especially in the establishing of the law, when the Lord is giving the law for them, and especially in the process to come and be and take the responsibility of the new land, the Lord is talking them to keep in the mind that they were pilgrims. And it's very interesting for me, if you can check in Deuteronomy chapter 26, verse 5, as part of the process of the ceremony of offering the first fruit, in the moment that the priest came to the front with the first fruit and make an offering to the Lord, he had to say as follows. He had to say, my father was a wandering Aramean, and he went down into Egypt with few people and lived there and become a great nation, powerful and numerous. Think about that. What it means for the people when they bring the first offering, and remembering we are receiving the first offering because we are following the path that the Lord drafted for us. We are offering the first fruit, but we are not the only one. but some other people will be adding that. And we have to remember that we are part of that. So the third is during the exile, if you can see, they were affirming about that. What about the New Testament? In the New Testament, the picture that emerged is Jesus as migrant. As you can see, the story of Jesus Christ is a story of a migrant. The birth of Jesus Christ came his birth came and present the family and the birth of Jesus Christ in the middle of a migration. They were moving from one place to another because of fulfilling the order of Caesar Augustus. He also experienced the limitation of migrants when he had to born and put in a nest that's not necessary. It's a children nest. So he was experienced that exclusion. He also we can see also in Luke chapter 2 that he was there in Matthew. He also, well, I get lost because I don't understand. but you can see that he and his family were migrant when after the visit of the magicians, and they came and they awake in Herod the reality that a king was born. He had to flee to Egypt and live there like as a migrant, a refugee, someone that is flying from death. And it is happening here. It sounds familiar for you? People who fled because they are persecuted, and the only hope for them is come. That is a reality of very many of the migrants. I remember that when I was talking with this person in the church in the United States. He's saying, why they are coming here? I say, because of life. Because it's the only hope for them to live for a while. First of all, because some of them are persecuted by the world. Some of them are persecuted by their religion, like it's happening in Europe as well, in the migrant into Europe. Some other is the only hope for them to send some money for his family to live for a while. So that was the reality of Jesus Christ as well. So we can see that in chapter 25, 24 and 25, when he was introducing the idea of migration, of the great commandment for the great, not commandment, the great commission for the disciples. In that very moment, the Lord let them know that they will be filled as migrants. And in his letter, the Apostle Peter, he said, think yourself as migrants. That is the invitation that he made. So we as Christians need to change our mind. We are migrants. The only hope for the church and the only hope for the world through the church is that the church transform the mentality and become a pilgrim church. A church in a migrant road that is going from here from the Jerusalem to the New Jerusalem. But first of all, we have to cross all the roads of the world. So that is the way in which we can observe that. We also can see that when the Lord gave us the Great Commission, He asked us to move from Jerusalem to the rest of the nation, making disciples in every one of those places. So migration is in the blood, in the inner tissue of the people of God, but also in the blood and the inner tissue of the church, the Church of Jesus Christ. We are part of that migration. In some way, you are here in this place in preparation to take advantage of your migration. Think about that. The elements that you are receiving, the training that you are receiving, is to make it easy to you to migrate to another places with a purpose. And that is the introduction or the new understanding of mission, because Samuel Escobar, a very well-known scholar, a Latin American scholar, he said that the Christian faith is a faith that was born to travel, a migrant faith. And that is the reality. We will change word for church, and it's exactly the same idea. The church is a church that was born to travel. How do you explain that the church that the church received first the map of his trajectory before they were established? In 118, they received the map that showed where the church had to travel. And we have to wait to chapter 2 for the starting of the church. So the church was born to travel. So in that way, we need to think about migration as an opportunity and instead of a problem. Samuel Escobar continued thinking with us, and for me it was very interesting to help me think about the opportunities that we have. And he said that the only way for us to understand how the realities of migration are helping the church to fulfill the Great Commission is when we see in the complete picture of mission. And he said that the complete picture of mission starts with this 5 elements. The first, marturia, that means the opportunity or the part of the mission that is connected with testimony. As you said, marturia is the word that gives birth to martyrdom. So marturia is to give testimony of Jesus Christ, even the last consequences. That is the first part of the mission, as Samuel Escobar said. The second is koinonia. Is when we believe that we are part of one church globally. And it doesn't matter where we are moving, we are part of that church. It doesn't matter where are we living now, we belong to the Church of Jesus Christ. And in that network, in that connection, we are growing together when we share our culture, when we share our understanding, and we share our resources in order to fulfill the gospel. The third part of the mission, he said, is liturgia. And liturgia is the moment when we together express our worship to the Lord, and he said we make publicity to the Lord. When we start singing, we are still singing to worship to the Lord, but to announce to the people in the streets that we are preparing to start our journey. For me, it's very interesting because most of the churches in Latin America are this kind, as you can see there. We have a big window in the front for the people in the street. When they cross, they see the church celebrating inside. We always think that we are celebrating the Lord, but we never realize what the people outside is thinking. And usually we hope that they are thinking, oh, what a joy is expressing inside of this church, don't you? Or, whoa, what? It's full of people. And or probably we hope that they express, oh, what a beautiful podium they have. What a rugs. Or what a kind of church, it's look beautiful. They are not thinking about it. In reality, when the people cross the street and see us worshiping the Lord, they say, where are they going to stop and go out and let me know what is the source of happiness that they have? What is changing their life for me to have benefit? If you see for the people hands crossing in front of the church and looking inside, there is not any benefit for us to be a joyful service that morning. The most important moment for the church starts when the light shut off, when the doors were open, and when the people start moving out in order to share the gospel with the people in need outside. That's migration all about. When you see the churches moving in different places for that. Because if we have the faith in Germany, if you are part of the believers of Germany, it means that with 3, it's enough. As the Bible said in Matthew chapter 18, verse 20, 3 are enough to continue sharing the gospel. The rest need to start moving, going to the end of the earth, and to the end consequences to share the joy of the gospel to the people, and the power of the Holy Spirit to transform them. So the next one is diaconia. Diaconia means this process when the church engage in serving the community for the community, fill the hands of the church. Fill the hands of blessing for the church. And finally, prophetia. When the church start the process to challenge the nation, to challenge the society, to challenge the government and the social structure to be transformed to the will of the Lord. That is mission all about. So when we see migration is in the middle of that. And if you see that, you can see how can we engage in migration when we have a full understanding of the mission of God. So when we see this contextual or this common reality that we are living, our calling is that we have to correct our perception of mission. Because we think that mission is only kerygma. And kerygma is to preach about the gospel. That is part of that. But this is a balanced and unique kind of mission that we have to have. So how migration helped the global mission of migration as the mission strategy? And first, the problem if we say problem in this way, the problem of migration is in reality an opportunity for the church, and an opportunity for mission. And the first opportunity that I can see is that the immigrants are the arm of the church. They represent the opportunity for the church to extend their hands to a different place. When we see the way in the Lord is moving the world, we can see that migration was used as an opportunity, as a catalytic for renewing the church. So we can see that, for example, in Spain. I remember a time that I was in Spain, and I was talking with the pastor. And the pastor told me, for the last 20 years, I have been pastoring this church. And the biggest number was 20 people. The best year is when we have one baptism a year. But suddenly, from one Sunday to another, and he repeated me, and I'm telling seriously, from one Sunday to another, my church grew from 20 to 100. And the 80% of the church are migrants from Colombia, from Venezuela, from Ecuador, from different places. And it really transformed the church. First of all, because Spaniards become the minority in their own church. But he said, every Sunday as I finish my preaching, the Latin Americans came and say, Pastor, when we are going to organize a campaign to go and evangelize people, and it changes the mentality of the church. A church that was thinking inward now is looking and thinking outward. So migrant has refined that. Migrants also are the missionary arms of the church, as we can see in the Bible, but also the immigrants are bringing the opportunity for the church to share the gospel. In this very moment, if you realize, is there a lot of people in the free Europe that for the church in Europe was unable to reach them because in the past They live in close countries, close for the gospel. So migration is bringing the whole world to the neighbor of the church. So in this moment, I can affirm that the church is planted, any church in any part of the world, is planted in the very center of the mission field. If we need to think that mission starts in the front door of the church and finish in the back door of the church, but before we have to travel all over the nations. So that is the second. And third, the immigrant is bringing the church all over. We can see from Latin America where the church is growing incredible. It's not a growth, it's an explosion. But the migrants that are coming out from Latin America to the end of the year, they bring in the church in the backpack. And when they arrive to those places, they feel forced to open and unpack the gospel and start sharing with the people there. So what's the problem that we have to engage in this benefit, to see the immigrant as the migrants as the evangelistic arm of the church, or to see the immigrant as an opportunity to renew the church and to open and put the word close of the church, or the immigrant to give the opportunity to renew and to refresh the church. I think the problem is one single word: discipleship. Discipleship is our problem. Because when we don't disciple, people don't understand his place in the world as it is. When we don't disciple, people are moving from one place to another and they don't realize that they're moving with a purpose. When we don't disciple, people are not ready to share the gospel. When we don't disciple, people inside of the window of the church is very happy with the celebration. But as soon as they cross the street, they go out of the door, they got lost because they have no opportunity to engage in a fruitful conversation and relationship with him. I think that migration is changed the shape of the world. But also, migration is changed the reality of the church today. But I hope and I pray that migration change perception of yourself as missionaries. Because the Lord is putting you in the very front line of how the church will engage effectively this reality of the world when people are moving from one place to another place. So, welcome to my world. Welcome to that reality when we are moving from one place to another and we never stop until the second coming of Christ. Thank you very much.
Welcome.